Ethan's eyes fluttered open to a silence so complete it felt like the void itself was holding its breath. The cold was the first thing that clawed at him, sharp and relentless, seeping through the thin fabric of his flight suit. He blinked against the harsh blue light filtering through the cracked viewport of the escape pod, a tiny coffin adrift in the infinite dark. For a moment, his mind struggled to orient itself. Where was he? Why was he shivering like a newborn starling? And then, just as clarity began to pierce the fog of exhaustion, he realized he wasn't alone. Wrapped around him, nestled against his chest as if he were the only warmth in the galaxy, was a girl. Not just any girl, but an alien girl, naked and trembling. Her skin a faint, shimmering shade of blue that seemed almost translucent in the pod's dim glow. Her ears were long, tapering elegantly toward the tips like the leaves of some impossible plant, twitching ever so slightly against his arm. Her hair, pale and wispy, tangled softly in his collar. The absurdity of the situation hit Ethan like a rogue asteroid. "Well," he murmured, voice thick with sleep and disbelief. "This is not the kind of company I was expecting when I signed up for the pilot's handbook." The girl stirred, blinking wide eyes the color of distant nebulae, her breath coming in small, rapid gasps. Ethan's shivering slowed as his body absorbed her warmth, a fragile life tethered to his in this cold, indifferent void. He wanted to laugh, but the gravity of their predicament pressed down. Being stranded alone was bad enough, but stranded with an alien girl clinging to you for warmth? That was a plot twist even his simulator hadn't prepared him for. "Hey!" he whispered, careful not to startle her. "You okay there, stowaway?" Her eyes flickered, not with fear but curiosity. She raised a hand, slender and delicate, and placed it on his chest. Her touch was cool, yet it sparked a strange comfort that made Ethan's heart stutter oddly. He tried to gauge if she understood him. He wasn't sure if she spoke, or if communication between their species involved some kind of telepathy or unspoken gestures. His mind ticked through every xenolinguistics course he'd taken, none of which mentioned naked blue aliens with extremely long ears. The pod creaked, groaning softly as if aware of the precarious balance holding them afloat in space. Ethan tugged his suit jacket tighter around them both. "You know," he said, voice laced with dry humor, "if you wanted a lift, you could have just hit the emergency beacon instead of sneaking into my arms like some interstellar cold bug." A faint, almost imperceptible smile flickered across her lips. That was something, a smile. Encouraged, Ethan continued, "Name's Ethan. Pilot, unwilling babysitter, and apparently, a heater for the night." He tapped the small console with a finger. "And you are?" The girl hesitated. Then in a voice soft and melodic but filled with an undercurrent of strength, she said something unfamiliar. Ethan caught a few syllables, guttural yet strangely musical. He shook his head. "I'm gonna need you to run that by me again. Galactic Pilot 101 doesn't cover alien girl names." She pointed at herself, then at him, nodding slowly, a silent pact forming in the frozen air between them. He gestured back and forth, trying to bridge the language gap, chuckling softly when she mimicked his exaggerated gestures with surprising dexterity. Despite the dire circumstances, the moment felt oddly light, a fragile bubble of humor in the vast, uncaring cosmos. Ethan's gaze drifted to the pod's systems. Blinking lights and faint humming suggested life support was still clinging to life, but not for long. "We've got a limited window before this tin can turns into a glorified metal tomb," he muttered. "And you're not exactly dressed for the occasion." The alien girl's ears twitched, picking up his words in some form or another, and she tried to cover herself with a piece of fabric Ethan found tucked away. It was laughably small, a desperate gesture against the cold that barely did the trick. He shook his head with a wry smile. "Not exactly haute couture, but hey, you wear it better than I do." Minutes stretched as they huddled together, the pod drifting silently through the star-speckled void. Ethan's mind raced through possible scenarios, rescue protocols, emergency transmissions, the odds of either happening before hypothermia claimed them both. But then, beneath the weight of fear and uncertainty, a quiet connection grew. The alien girl's hand found his again, fingers cool but steady. A simple gesture that spoke louder than words. Ever feel like the universe has a sick sense of humor? Ethan whispered, voice rough but amused. Here I am, a trained pilot, stranded light years from home with an alien girl who thinks the best way to stay warm is to cling to me like I'm a cosmic blanket. She laughed then, a soft sound like the chime of distant bells, and Ethan found himself laughing too. In that infinite emptiness, a shared moment of lightness bloomed. A tiny rebellion against the cold, the silence, the terrifying vastness outside their fragile sanctuary. As stars blinked past in silent procession, Ethan realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about connection. About two strangers thrown together by chance and circumstance, finding warmth in each other's presence. The cold outside was ruthless, but inside the pod, something tender, unexpected, and profoundly human was beginning to take root. He looked down at the alien girl, her long ears twitching softly in the low light, her eyes reflecting distant galaxies. All right, Lyra, he said, using the name he'd settled on. Let's figure out how to get you clothed, the pod fixed, and maybe, just maybe, get out of this cosmic mess alive. Sound like a plan? She nodded, eyes bright with a mix of hope and determination. And for the first time since he woke, Ethan felt the sharp edge of isolation dull just a little. Together, stranded in the cold emptiness of space, they were no longer alone. The pod's dim interior buzzed faintly as Ethan fumbled through the emergency supplies. Okay, Lyra, he said, holding up a tattered package of nutrient paste with a mock grimace. This is what passes for gourmet cuisine when you're floating in space without a decent kitchen. Lyra's wide eyes studied the package, then glanced at Ethan's expectant face. She wrinkled her nose, and with a small shake of her head, she seemed to say, no thanks. Ethan chuckled. I don't blame you. Even I wouldn't touch this if I had a better option. He peeled open the seal and scooped some paste onto a plastic spoon, making exaggerated chewing noises to lighten the mood. Lyra mimicked him cautiously, and then burst into a fit of giggles that echoed softly in the pod's tight quarters. Ethan watched her closely, fascinated by the subtle flickers of color that rippled beneath her blue skin every time she smiled or laughed. He noticed her long ears twitch with every sound, moving almost like antennae tuned to the frequency of his voice. You know, he said, grinning, I've always wanted to be a translator for an alien race. Turns out, it's a lot harder when the alien won't speak English and refuses my space snacks. Lyra raised her hand in a gentle gesture, touching her throat and then pointing to him, as if trying to say, teach me. Ethan's grin widened. Deal. Lesson 1. Not everything that's edible looks good, especially in space. As the pod drifted further from the wreckage of his ship, Ethan began to experiment with the communication panel. The console flickered under his fingers, ancient and glitchy, but still functional enough to send out weak signals. All right, old girl, he muttered. Let's see if you can scream loud enough to get someone's attention. Static hissed in the speakers, and he caught a glimpse of a strange pattern, an unfamiliar modulation beneath the noise. Lyra leaned in, her ears twitching sharply. What is it? Ethan asked. She pointed at the screen, then to herself, tapping her chest. That's not just static, he mused. That looks like some kind of encoded signal. Maybe from your home. Lyra's eyes flickered with a sudden spark of hope, or was it recognition? She raised her hands, fingers weaving intricate shapes in the air. A silent language Ethan couldn't decipher, but somehow felt the urgency behind. Okay, he said. I'm no expert in alien sign language, but whatever you're saying, I'm listening. She smiled, the glow in her eyes intensifying, and for a moment the pod felt less like a prison and more like a ship of discovery. Between moments of tense repairs and attempts to send a distress call, Ethan tried to lighten the mood. You ever hear the one about the space traveler who tried to make friends with a creature that had ears longer than his ship's antenna? He joked. Lyra tilted her head, intrigued. No, he grinned. Neither had I until now. She laughed again, a clear, musical sound that filled the cramped space with warmth. The sound made Ethan realize how much he needed this. Laughter, companionship, a reminder that even in the vast loneliness of space, they were not just survivors, but something more. The hours slipped by with a slow rhythm, broken only by the occasional mechanical groan or the soft hum of the pod's life support systems. Ethan studied Lyra as she explored the limited space, her movements graceful despite the cramped quarters. He noticed how her long ears picked up the faintest vibrations, the distant pulse of the stars, the subtle shifts in temperature, even the tiny crackle of his own breath. "You really are something else," he murmured. "I mean, who knew ears could be so expressive?" She responded by curling one of her ears around his wrist, a gesture that was surprisingly comforting. Ethan smiled and rubbed the tip gently. "Yeah, okay, maybe you win the award for the coolest alien features. Next time, though, bring a spacesuit." She looked at him with those vast eyes, sparkling with curiosity and something like mischief. Ethan laughed, feeling a spark of hope flicker in the depths of the cold, unfeeling void. As night crept across the silent cosmos beyond their tiny sanctuary, Ethan found himself sharing stories, tales of Earth's chaotic cities, of endless oceans and towering mountains, of people who dreamed beyond the stars. Lyra listened intently, her fingers tracing patterns on the console, her expression shifting between wonder and wistfulness. In turn, she offered glimpses of her own world. Icy plains beneath twin moons, forests that glowed faintly under alien skies, creatures with wings that whispered secrets on the wind. Their worlds, so different yet intertwined by fate, began to weave together through their shared words. Suddenly, a sharp beep jolted Ethan from his reverie. The pod's sensors flared to life, detecting a faint energy signature nearby. He exchanged a look with Lyra, whose ears twitched with alertness. "Well," Ethan said with a grin, "looks like we might not be alone after all. Maybe rescue is closer than we thought." Lyra nodded, a hopeful smile curving her lips. Yet, beneath the optimism, both knew the universe was never so simple. The cold outside pressed in once more, but inside the pod, warmth blossomed, born of shared stories, tentative trust, and a humor that defied the crushing silence of space. As the stars wheeled overhead, Ethan realized that survival was not just about fixing broken machines or signaling for help. It was about finding light in the darkness, laughter amid fear, and a strange, unexpected companionship with a girl whose long ears and glowing skin were as alien as the stars themselves. Together, they faced the vast unknown. Two unlikely travelers bound by circumstance, laughter, and a fragile hope that somewhere beyond the cold void, they might find a way home. Static hissed through the speakers again, louder this time, as Ethan adjusted the pod's fragile communication array. "All right, old girl. Let's see if we can't shout loud enough for the whole quadrant to hear," he muttered, fingers dancing over the console's worn buttons. Lyra watched intently, her long ears twitching like radar dishes tuned to an unknown frequency. Ethan tried to decipher the patterns flickering on the screen, a mix of alien code and electromagnetic noise. "Looks like we've got a cosmic soap opera unfolding here," he joked. "Except nobody told me there'd be subtitles." Lyra leaned closer, her eyes reflecting the flickering lights. She traced symbols in the air with her slender fingers, her voice a soft hum, something between a song and a whisper. Ethan tried to mimic her, but all he got was a strangled cough and a raised eyebrow from the girl. "Clearly, I'm a natural communicator," he quipped, rubbing his throat. Lyra giggled, a sound like chimes in a gentle breeze, and Ethan felt the tension ease, the vast loneliness of space shrinking just a little. Suddenly, a crackle interrupted their playful exchange. The console beeped urgently, displaying a sequence of data streams that made Ethan's heart skip. "That's no random static," he said, eyes narrowing. "It's a transmission, encoded, but definitely intentional." Lyra's ears perked up, flicking toward the console as if she recognized the signal's origin. She whispered something in her melodic tongue, words that Ethan couldn't understand but sensed carried weight. "Could be a distress call or a trap," Ethan murmured. "But either way, it means we're not the only ones out here." He felt a surge of hope. tempered by the harsh reality of their situation. The pod's life support was still hanging by a thread, and their supplies were dwindling. We need to decide. Follow the signal or keep drifting and hope someone finds us first. Lyra's eyes met his, shimmering with determination. She touched his arm lightly, then pointed at the console and finally at the viewport, where stars streaked past in silent procession. The message was clear. Whatever awaited out there was worth risking everything for. Ethan smiled wryly. You're braver than me. I'll give you that. He stood, pacing in the cramped space. All right, Captain Ears. Let's see where this mysterious call leads us. Working together, they reprogrammed the pod's navigation, steering toward the source of the signal. The pod shuddered as its engines strained against the vast emptiness, a tiny ship chasing a whisper in the dark. Ethan couldn't help but joke. You know, I always imagined space adventures would have more explosions and less bickering with a naked alien about wardrobe malfunctions. Lyra's laugh, light and infectious, filled the cramped cockpit, chasing away the encroaching dread. As they neared the signal's origin, the pod's sensors picked up an anomaly. An enormous wreckage floating in the void, its twisted metal skeleton illuminated by the distant glow of a dying star. Well, Ethan said, peering through the viewport. Looks like someone else had a worse day than us. Lyra's expression tightened, her long ears flattening slightly as she scanned the debris with a keen gaze. Is this your home? Ethan asked gently. Lyra hesitated, then nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Lost? She said simply, the weight of the word heavy in the stale air. Ethan placed a reassuring hand over hers. We'll figure it out. Together. She smiled, a fragile beacon in the void. Suddenly, the pod jolted violently, alarms blaring as a rogue energy pulse rippled through space. Brace yourself, Ethan shouted, gripping the console. Lyra's hands glowed faintly, emitting a soft, pulsing light that seemed to push back against the invisible force battering them. Ethan stared in awe. You're full of surprises, aren't you? The pod stabilized, and the alarms fell silent. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. You're like a walking space anomaly. I'm just a pilot. You're a one-woman defense system. Lyra chuckled, her long ears twitching playfully. Guess I'm more useful than a cosmic blanket. With systems slowly recovering, they sent out a transmission beacon, embedding it within the wreckage's broadcast. If anyone's out there, they'll find us now, Ethan said, hope sparking anew. Lyra leaned close, whispering words Ethan didn't understand but felt in his bones. A promise, a plea, a connection that transcended worlds. As the pod drifted in the shadow of the wreckage, Ethan realized that their journey was no longer just about survival. It was about unraveling the mysteries of the vast galaxy, about friendship forged in the crucible of desperation and laughter, about a pilot and an alien girl, lost together in the cold void, discovering that even in the darkest corners of space, light could be found. Sometimes in the form of a smile, a joke, or the gentle twitch of long, alien ears. The pod's engines hummed steadily as Ethan and Lyra settled into a rhythm, the weight of the unknown pressing around them, but tempered by small moments of levity. You know, Ethan said, stretching his cramped limbs, if anyone told me I'd be co-piloting with a naked alien girl who glows in the dark and has ears that could pick up a sneeze from a light year away, I'd have asked for a refund. Lyra glanced at him, one long ear flicking in amusement. Refund? She repeated in her soft, lilting voice. Ethan grinned. Yeah, like a promise to get something better next time. But honestly, I'm starting to think you're the best thing that's happened to me in a long while. Lyra smiled, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the console. I never imagined humans so humorous, she said. Ethan shrugged. Humor's a survival skill, especially when the universe seems determined to keep you on your toes. Or, in our case, floating in a cramped pod with questionable snacks. She laughed, a sound like the tinkling of glass, breaking the tension that threatened to gather in the air like static. As they approached the coordinates of the mysterious signal, the pod's sensors picked up something unexpected. A swirling nebula, iridescent and alive with faint pulses of energy. Ethan tapped the console thoughtfully. Well, if this isn't the universe's way of showing off, I don't know what is. Lyra's eyes gleamed with curiosity. This nebula, it resonates with my people's ancient energy. She reached out tentatively, her fingers passing through the holographic display, tracing the flowing currents of plasma and charged particles. Suddenly, the pod jolted as an unexpected gravitational pull tugged at them. Ethan gritted his teeth. Hold on. Looks like we're getting a cosmic tug-of-war invitation. Lyra's ears twitched rapidly as she focused her energy, and a faint glow surrounded her hands. I can stabilize us, she said, voice steady but intense. Ethan watched in awe as the ambient light bent around her fingertips, the pod's trajectory steadying under her subtle influence. You're like a one-woman gravity well, he joked, heart pounding. If this whole pilot thing doesn't work out, you could moonlight as a space wizard. The pod slipped into a stable orbit around the nebula's edge, and as the stars shimmered beyond, Ethan felt a cautious optimism bloom. You think the signal's coming from within that mass of swirling gas and light? He asked. Lyra nodded. It is a beacon, an ancient distress call, encoded in energy patterns only my species can decipher. Ethan leaned forward, eyes scanning the readings. So this isn't just a random SOS. It's a message meant for you. Lyra's gaze drifted toward the nebula's heart, a silent moment stretching between them. My people once inhabited a planet near this nebula, she explained. Long ago, our civilization faced calamity. The beacon is a relic, part warning, part hope. Ethan absorbed her words, the enormity of their mission settling like a star's gravity. Looks like we're not just trying to survive anymore. We're chasing history, maybe even destiny. The pod systems beeped softly as a new alert flashed. Ethan tapped the console, pulling up a holographic map layered with alien symbols. According to this, there's a derelict ship caught in the nebula's edge, old tech, but maybe still salvageable. Lyra's ears perked up. That ship may hold answers, our past and perhaps a way forward. Ethan smirked. Well, then, Captain Ears, shall we go ghost hunting in the nebula? Lyra smiled, a mixture of amusement and resolve. Let us proceed carefully. The nebula is beautiful but treacherous. The pod maneuvered into the glowing haze, sensors strained to keep track through the swirling plasma storms. Ethan cracked a joke to break the tension. I always wanted to pilot through a cosmic kaleidoscope. Guess this beats my usual Tuesday. As they neared the derelict, strange energy readings pulsed from its hull. Lyra's hands glowed faintly again, and Ethan noticed her ears twitching with unusual intensity. This ship, it is a vessel of legends, once thought lost, she whispered. Its secrets could change everything. Ethan nodded, feeling the thrill of discovery mingled with the ever-present risk. Well, legends or not, let's hope it comes with a manual. With delicate precision, they docked the pod alongside the ancient craft. The airlock hissed open, and together, they stepped into the cold silence of forgotten corridors. Ethan's flashlight beam cut through the gloom as they explored, encountering relics of advanced technology and alien inscriptions. You know, Ethan said, half-joking, if ghosts haunt ships, I'm hoping they're friendly. Lyra smiled, her eyes bright in the dark. In this place, the past waits patiently for those who listen. Amid the shadows, a faint pulse echoed, an energy signature resonating with Lyra's own. It is a message, she said softly, waiting to be unlocked. Ethan reached out, his hand brushing against a glowing console. The ship stirred to life, ancient systems humming with reluctant power. Looks like we're not alone, Ethan whispered. In that moment, surrounded by the weight of history and the flickering light of alien technology, Ethan and Lyra stood united, pilots of their own fate, charting a course through the mysteries of space and the fragile hope of connection. The universe stretched vast and unknowable, but within the derelict's quiet heart, they found a promise. That even in the coldest reaches of the cosmos, courage, laughter, and companionship could light the way forward. The pod shuddered as the cosmic storm battered its hull, the lights flickering wildly. Ethan gripped the console, jaw tight. Well, of all the places to throw a tantrum, a storm in the middle of nowhere takes the cake. Lyra's hands glowed softly, a calming light that pushed back the chaos. Focus, Ethan. This storm will not define us. Ethan smirked despite the tension. Easy for you to say, you've got space magic. The tempest roared outside, but inside the pod, something stronger than metal and machinery held firm. A bond forged in desperation, laughter, and shared hope. As the storm's fury peaked, Lyra's energy flared, weaving a shimmering shield that wrapped around the pod like an invisible guardian. Ethan's eyes widened. I swear, if you start pulling rabbits out of that glowing sleeve of yours, I'm asking for a raise. Lyra's soft chuckle was a balm to the storm's howl. No rabbits, only ancient power awakened. The pod steadied, the violent shakes slowing to gentle tremors. Ethan exhaled, voice steady. You really are something else, Lyra. I don't know what I'd do without you. She reached out, fingers brushing his arm, warmth radiating beyond the touch. Together, we are stronger. As the storm passed, sensors blinked alive. Rescue beacon signals finally locked on. Ethan punched coordinates, a grin breaking through the exhaustion. Looks like our cosmic hitchhiking days are coming to an end. Lyra smiled, eyes reflecting distant stars. Perhaps this is only the beginning. Docked at the rescue vessel, the sterile lights a stark contrast to the pod's intimate glow, Ethan and Lyra stood side by side. Ethan's gaze lingered on her long ears twitching with the steady hum of the new ship's systems. You know, he said quietly, I came into this thinking survival was just about staying alive, but you taught me it's about connection, about finding warmth even in the coldest void. Lyra's voice was soft but firm. We are not defined by distance between stars, but by the bonds we forge. Ethan nodded, feeling the truth settle deep within him. And maybe a little humor helps too. Together, they looked out at the swirling cosmos, a vast canvas of endless possibilities. The alien girl and the human pilot, once strangers lost in space, now companions with a story written across the stars. Ethan smiled. Ready for our next adventure, Captain? Lyra's long ears twitched in agreement. Always. The universe was vast and uncertain, but within it, they had found something eternal. Hope, courage, and a friendship that transcended worlds.